Thank you guys for coming to the talk, which is all around creating 7 proven culture principles that you can utilize in your centers or in your environment to proactively optimize performance. I appreciate all you guys being here. I'm assuming that because we're all together, you have a passion and that we share a passion for employee engagement, and that we share a passion for optimizing performance. Or my other theory is you're here because I'm the only guy in this entire room that is not talking about Gen AI and you needed a break. That could be the case too. All right, how many people manage employees here? Excellent. While you're managing employees, do you ever use the internet to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work when it comes to building a great customer experience or a great management experience and a great employee experience? Do you do your research? Does it feel like the information ocean? Because there is so much information out there. All of us at this point should be subject matter experts on all of that, correct? Because it's all available. Yet at the same time, none of us have time to go through digging through the information ocean, right? So what can you do? Well, the thing that I recommend highly is use a speedboat. And I love this great quote. It's a Chinese quote: "To know the road ahead, ask those coming back." The quickest way you can learn something is to connect with somebody that's actually already done it and has seen success with that, and they can share that with you, right? This speedboat that we're going to talk about today, hi Vicki. This speedboat that we're talking about today was built over 30 years and of experience dealing with trial and terror of what works and what doesn't work. And eventually, we came out with the full field-tested methodology called the C's of Success, which is all around creating employee engagements to drive bottom-line results. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I guess it's time I introduce myself. My name's Adam Boelke. I'm the managing partner and founder of a consulting group called the Alignment Advantage Group. And I'm a former VP of operations with 30 years of leading global customer service organizations for Fortune 500s and others, both from startups as well as large organizations. And like I said, it's field tested. I've worked with building call centers from the ground up, basically gutting a building and hiring all the employees and then managing those 10 different times in 10 different places across the US as well as global. So I've done this in other countries as well. And what I will say is that at the end of the day, you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use this methodology and this experience on how to do these 3 things. That's the goal for today. Why now is the time to create a culture of engagement? There's an urgency that you probably are not aware of, but we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about how to take a proactive approach to creating a culture of engagement. Most of us are dealing with a reactive, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. And the last thing is we're going to talk about that it's a scalable approach. It doesn't matter if you have a small team or if you have a large Fortune 500 operation. This all works and something you can apply when you come home after this event. All right, so why now is the real important time for culture and employee engagement? First thing I'll tell you is that according to the Chief Executive magazine, which just came out, 60% of CEOs are prioritizing employee engagement and retaining employees as their #1 priority for this next year, which means they're going to be coming to you. If you are the CEO, you already know what I'm talking about. But if you're going to go to your operations leaders, they're going to be asking, how can we fix this? How can we make sure that we improve our employee retention? How can we improve our employee engagement? And it's not surprising because overall, I think everyone here is probably familiar with all the benefits that you get from a bottom line when you actually create a culture of engagement. We see really strong revenue improvements. We see higher profits. We see higher customer loyalty, a 233% improvement in customer loyalty if you get them engaged, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because really, what happens? If they're not engaged, they don't own that experience, they don't really feel they're part of your culture, what happens? They don't have the ownership of that call. They're just looking at it as a transaction. That is not building a great brand experience for your customers calling into your centers. So what we do is get them connected and get them ownership. You can actually improve your absenteeism, of course, which makes sense if they're more engaged. But also, a big thing that happens to a lot of call centers and everyone's dealing with today is attrition, both from a new hire attrition as well as ongoing attrition. And the way you can combat that is a proactive approach and these 7 culture principles we're about to learn. Make sense to you guys? Awesome. So also, if you think about, most of us don't have time to deal with employee issues, right? It's a lot of work. What's interesting is that 40% of our time, when they've just recently reviewed this, 40% of them our fires are actually dealing with impacts from employee engagement issues. So if you want to reduce your firefighting and you want to increase time on your calendar, let's take a proactive approach to employee engagement. Right? Okay, here's the main challenge that we have, and I think this is what I hear a lot, is that there's a big gap in awareness between what an employee says you're doing and how you think you're doing. Whoops, sorry. So leaders think they've improved engagement. Actually, 84% of them think they've improved engagement. But when you talk to the employees and you go through the survey, the most recent Gallup results show that it is not what you think it is. That actually almost 70% of employees feel like they're either disengaged or actively disengaged. And actively disengaged, in their definition, is sabotaging you. That's what they mean by that. They literally are trying to make it bad for you. For your customers, they're really actually going after hurting your business. And what's really even worse is when you really start digging into what's driving employee disengagement, only 22% of the leaders out there actually know what's driving disengagement. So they don't know how to fix it. They just know they got a problem, or they may not even be aware they got a problem, but they're seeing it in their numbers. They're seeing it in their bottom line impacts, and they're seeing it in their attrition and absenteeism. That makes sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how to take a proactive approach. First thing I want to make sure everybody's clear on, unless you're proactively creating and designing your culture is going to happen with or without you. And it's really natural, right? People start working together. All of us have learned from experience. And whatever worked for us in our previous company, where how we got ahead, how we were successful, we're going to bring into our new company. And we're going to now start working together as a team, right? And apply those same things that worked. Well, the issue is maybe they didn't come from a great culture, right? Maybe the only way they got ahead before was through an old boys network. And that's how they are going to now come into your culture and in your environment and try to make that happen. Or maybe they came in with the only way they could get ahead was backstabbing, right? And so they knew that that's a way to prosper in their company. They apply it to your new one. That's not the culture you're looking for. So the thing you have to do is get out ahead of it. Well, how do you get out ahead of it? I call it the culture continuum. It has to start with the leader. The leader has to set the tone from the top. So if you think about this from a leadership perspective, there's two things. You've got to create a endorsement to the type of culture you're looking for. Design the culture, and then from there say, okay, you guys, now here's what we're looking to do, here's what we're trying to achieve. here's not only the goal that we're looking for from a mission perspective, but also from an engagement perspective, how we work together. You have to, as a leader, support this. You have to say, I'm okay with you challenging me. I'm okay with us having a real direct conversation about things. It's okay, and matter of fact, encourage that you speak your mind. You gotta set that permission from the top, because otherwise they start getting fearful of the hierarchy there, and they're trying to just live in your echo chamber and make sure you hear what you want to hear. But the reality is, for you to improve and for you to get better and for them to be part of your overall experience and ownership, they got to be part of it. So the leadership is driving the culture, and as the employees better understand that, as you work with them to make sure they are clear on what it is your culture is all about and how you want them to interface with your employees and how, the other employees, and how you interface with the customers, that's going to drive their behavior. Now they have some autonomy. They know what they're supposed to be making decisions around. I call it the compass, right? Your mission, vision, and values. This is giving them guidance on how to interact and how to be in your company. It's kind of giving them the keys to the kingdom, which is a good thing because you want them to be successful. That's going to drive their behavior. That behavior is going to then drive their performance, which of course is going to give you the results on the back end of the entire cycle. Once it hits your number again, once it goes back up to you, we have to start the whole loop again. As the leader, we need to be encouraging that this is working, that you guys are making that your employees are making a big difference, and then be the voice of kind of the cheerleader of your culture and your objectives that you're trying to get to. Does that make sense to you guys? So this is the proactive way to do this versus the reactive way of letting things just happen without you being in front of it. So let's talk about actually how to do this from a scalable perspective. So before we can actually prescribe, we have to diagnose. So we have to really understand what's actually happening. So from here, this is the top reasons for disengagement based off the most recent Gallup study done for the 2023 workplace assessment. So the first one makes a lot of sense to me, right? This is around connecting with your mission. They don't know they're part of something bigger than themselves. Has anybody read the book Daniel Pink's Drive? There's three things that that drive intrinsically, that drive performance and motivation. One of them is being part of something bigger than ourselves. We have to connect with something that we know we contribute to making a difference. The second thing is around self-mastery. If you think about this, I play guitar. No one is paying me to play guitar, I promise you. However, I still go and I go practice on a regular basis to kind of get better at what I do. It's self-mastery. It's driven within us to get better at what we do. And the reason I mention these are things you can use to drive your motivation for your employees. This is the attack that you want to take. And the last one is autonomy. Has anybody heard that micromanagement is not welcome? Right? This is why. Because of autonomy. They don't feel that they need somebody to be saying, click the button, click the button, click the button. They just need to know what it is you want them to do and when you want them to do it and how to do it. And then after that, leave them alone, let them do it, right? And encourage them to achieve. And the next thing, so if you think about that, we've got our connection to the mission is part of that driven, right? We're trying to identify how we're part of something bigger ourselves. The clarity of expectations around KPIs. Are those KPIs actually in alignment with the mission, vision, and values that you said are important to you? And then the next piece to that is, what is my role specifically to that achieving that objectives? And those are my performance metrics, right? So it's very important we have KPIs created for that. The next one is I said self-mastery, right? Opportunities to learn and learn and grow. What I'm finding really interesting is this whole theory that he came out with in the book quite a few years ago now is proven true in last year's study. They're coming out with this and saying this is exactly what the problem is. The autonomy, which is opportunities for the employees to do what they do best. And then the last one is feeling cared about at work. Not just as your employee, but also as people. So the solution I'm going to present to you today and the 7 culture principles are all kind of wrapped up in what I call the C's of success. This is the speedboat I was talking about, built off of trial and terror for 30 years, working with companies and different size organizations all over the world. These 7 C's of success are the things that create the framework to support the culture of engagement that we're talking about. And this is the thing that will drive your bottom line performance. So it was really interesting for me when I attended. I was asked to speak at a leadership conference, and it was about best practices about what drove our success over the last year. And there was about 10 of us presenters. What I found really interesting was that all 10 of us had never talked before. We all went up. Each of us, as we started our presentation, whether it was a small project that they were working on or whether it was running an entire division, every one of us started with clarity on around mission, vision, and values of how we were going to work together, what our objective was, right? Every one of us said that that was the thing that drove their performance and made them successful for the past year. So I found that to be really interesting, but that is why clarity is the first C. And if we talk about that a little bit, we have multiple areas. One of them is to be very clear on the mission, vision, and values of the company. How many people have a beautiful poster of their mission statement on their wall? A couple. How many people spend some time talking to their employees about what that mission statement really means? Excellent. I saw a couple hands. I went into one company, and into the executive quarters of one company was a beautiful poster about a mission statement, and it looked great. And I was like, okay, this is what they're all about. This is their compass they're going to use to guide their employees on how to interact with their employees or their other employees, and also how to interact with their customers. What I found really interesting is when I walked around the corner, there was another mission statement, completely different, also on another beautiful poster. So that got me wondering, which one are they actually following? Which one are they using to guide their employees on how to interact with their customers? How do they interact with each other to be successful, right? And when I got a little further into it, I found out they weren't doing it at all. They weren't using it as a compass. This was strictly a document. Matter of fact, the guy that ran that at that time wasn't even part of either one of those mission statements. This was a totally new thing. He just adopted the previous ones. So that's a real miss, right? That's a missed opportunity to really be in front of the culture and to be in front of the expectations as a company and as a leader. Does that resonate with anybody here? I'm seeing some nods, right? So it makes a lot of sense because at the end of the day, that is the compass. That's the guide. If you want to create alignment in your organization, everybody has to have a reference point. Everybody has to know what's expected of them and how we should be best operating. So that's the clear vision, mission, and values. I call these the foundational beliefs as well, because at the end of the day, this is the foundation that everything will be built on. If you think about structurally building a house, if that foundation's off, what happens? You're dealing with that forever, right? Between cracks in the walls to, weird sounds coming out and structural integrity is damaged. You're going to do the same thing in your culture if you don't create a very strong foundation on the front end. I can't emphasize this enough. I think it's so important that employees identify this as a connection and they really understand specifically what it is you're trying to achieve. And if they understand that, a lot of good things can happen from there. The other piece is, what are you going to do with that mission? What are those objectives you're trying to do? Let me know. Let me be part of that. And also cascading goals. How specifically do what I do affect your overall objectives as a company? And let's measure that. Clear rules of engagement is, again, making keys to the kingdom, telling them how to actually interact with each other so they can be more effective long term. And then budget. Budget, make sure your managers know that there's a budget available and that what it is specifically related to employee events, employee engagement activities, training and development. All that is important. I went into one client the other day and their manager was funding the annual customer service week activities out of her own pocket every year because she had no idea there was a budget already set aside for that. And this is a large company. So it is not just isolated events. This is something that I see on a regular basis. Make sure your people know what they have available to help their employees. Does that sound familiar to you guys too? Couple nods. All right. Last one is clear recruiting requirements. And why that's important is we have to make sure that we're hiring the right people, not just because of their skills and experience, but also what kind of person are they? How do they react to, let's say, constructive feedback? How do they react to high-pressure situations? Asking behavior-based questions about their personal characteristics will give you a much better alignment with your culture and with the job that you're trying to achieve. So you need that clarity around what is expected. So the second C is around connect and commit. This is where your employees are going to actually look at how what they do and how it affects your operation. But they have to connect with it on a personal level. If you're going to share your values with them and say, I want you to follow these values to make it more important or make it more aligned, they're going to be like, well, who are you? Right? You can't tell me who my values are. So what you really have to do is kind of help them identify what their values are. And once you identify what their values are, you have to be able to be willing to say, you know what? There's alignment between what's important to you and what's important to the company. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to say, you can hold me and anybody on the management team to the same values you just came up with. And do you have agreement on our values? Do you agree that these are sympathetic, that these are actually resonate with each other? Once we have that agreement, now we get commitment. Because now we're saying, this is something you said is yours. I'm going to say it's part of our culture. Now I've involved you into creating our culture. Now I've involved you to be part of the solution for this. That make sense to you guys? Now you'll defend it as an employee. You'll be like, this is how we're supposed to be, because I created it. I actually created a culture creation workshop just for this purpose, to help employees connect to the mission, to help them connect to the values. And I saw a massive difference. I'll share real quick with you. I had a large call center and we were doing a lot of recruiting at the same time. And what I ended up finding out was all the recruiting we were doing was kind of not effective because my culture creation workshop, where I made this connection with everybody, I was busy. I didn't have time to actually do the workshop. What did I get? I got employees that have been there for some time coming into my office saying, what are you doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, the people you're bringing in, they do not match our culture at all, right? This is not a good fit. I don't know what you guys are doing. And I thought about it. Nothing had changed. Recruiting hadn't changed. Same people recruiting. Our training hadn't changed. Same situation there. What changed? I wasn't talking to them about the culture. I wasn't having this conversation about having them be part of this and having ownership. And at the end of the day, I had my seasoned veterans coming in and complaining that I was screwing up. So it's okay. I really appreciate them telling me, because that gave me the gumption to go and fix that, right? Okay. The other thing to this is that giving them clear paths to participate. What I found really interesting in the onboarding process is, so I put a lot of effort into onboarding. I put a lot of effort into new hires coming into the organization. Because to me, it's a lot easier to train them up front and give them the right guidance so that they're successful than it is to try to untrain them later if I hadn't been there on the front end of this and try to fix things bad habits that they've created. So I spent a lot of time on the front end of that. So what's interesting though, there's some serious impacts to having low engagement on an onboarding process. How many people here are happy with their onboarding process in their companies? One? That's what I hear. There are surveys out there that show only 12% of employees feel like their onboarding process is a good one. 12%. Some say they never even had an onboarding process. They were just kind of trained and said, get to work. Interesting stuff, right? Looking at this, Glassdoor did a study on this, and they found that when they did a good onboarding, retention increased by 82%. If you're having a new hire attrition training problem, improve your onboarding process. Productivity for those same employees that had a great onboarding experience went up 70%. Those are not small numbers. These aren't like 3-4%, right? This is big impacts to your organization. The next one is around calibration. This is the next C. And it's really simple. It's as simple as what I think is a really good, or I'm going to use you. What you think is a really good customer experience is actually what your employees think is a real good customer experience. It's just calibrating those expectations, creating some definitions around what it means to provide good service. And we want to have the cadence of accountability up and down, which is as simple as saying, basically, you can hold me and my team to the same standards we're holding you to, and taking that and making that commitment to them. Cascading goals up and down is really around what I call it takes a village. And let me ask you guys, do you agree with this? It takes everybody in your organization to be able to successfully hit your goals and your targets. You agree with that? Everyone plays a big part and makes a difference. What's also interesting is we're symbiotic, meaning that, let's say, if you're an agent, you got to have your systems working well in order to support your customer. If the systems aren't working well, they're going to have a challenging customer experience. All right, so what should be the goal then for the network administrator? He should have an uptime percentage goal, right? Even though he's not directly dealing with customers, he's supporting that objective. And so those goals have to be aligned to achieving that result. That makes sense to you guys? I see this missing in a lot of companies I work with. All of those clear goals, we need to have good reporting on. They have to be able to see it from a proactive perspective, meaning that they actually achieve it at the end of the month, not just find out at the end of the month they didn't hit it. They need to be able to see and monitor their progress and try to make adjustments as the month goes on. But also, they also need to have goals that are specific to the objectives that they're trying to achieve. And all those goals have to tie into their performance reviews and tie into their merit increases. That makes sense to you guys? Cool. All right, the next one is around care and camaraderie. Just checking time, we're good. Okay. Care and camaraderie is around caring about the employee as individuals, not just around them as employees. And this will create the loyalty, and this will create the engagement we're looking for. You need to care about their development as people, right? You need to care about their success, and you need to care about their tools that they're using to do their job for you. You need to care about their health and safety, and you need to create community. All of us have a strong sense of community with our other employees. That's what needs to happen. And you can do a lot to facilitate that as a leader. And that's where you've got an opportunity to work with them to kind of make sure that everything that is important to them, you're including into your own culture as well. And the last thing is why this is important. If you're going to spend 70% of your time, your life, working at a job, it'd probably be helpful if you like the people you're working with. It'd probably be helpful if you knew how to interact with them on a personal level. Continuously improvement is all around just that, right? This is making sure they have an easy way to participate and build improvement in your organization, and they know how to do that. Have them involved in action teams to come up with solutions and come up with the next steps that you need to do as an organization to improve. And make sure they understand how to do that. Have targeted training and development on skills. This is not just about the job, but also their life skills. If you think about the fact that I was just hearing about Delta's CEO. He heard from their employees that they're all stressed about finances, right? So he did something I've never even heard any company do. They created a employee account for $1,000, and they put $1,000 in there, and then said the only requirement you need is to come to our financial training class and talk about personal finance management. And if they did that, they got to keep their $1,000. That's caring for the employee. That's pretty amazing. A big one on this one is also related to, I don't know if anybody just saw this This Is Us episode recently, but the guy walks in to quit. He interrupts this executive team meeting, and he says, look, my father just died. Have you guys seen this one? My father just died. I go to the funeral. I see the gift basket that you sent to the boss. He's talking to the boss. And it's a basket of pears. And I'm allergic to pears because the first dinner we went out together on, you actually ordered Roquefort salad that has pears in it, and I went into anaphylactic shock. And that's the gift basket you sent me with a Hallmark greeting card that was typewritten from the team. He didn't feel like he was cared for as an employee, right? So he quit. Let me give you an opposite scenario. My boss, one of the best bosses I ever worked for, when my father passed away, she found out where my mother lived, and she had a catered dinner on the first night that all of my siblings flew across the country to meet. We all got to eat and not worry about trying to figure out what we were going to have for dinner that night when we all got together to mourn the grieving of our father. That is caring for your employee. Caring for them as an individual, not just as an employee. Communication is the next piece. This has to be consistent. It has to be frequent. Let me tell you real quick about this. People wear glasses. Every one of us wears glasses, whether we're nearsighted or not. We all have them. This is how we view our world. If you have a gap in communication, people will fill in the blank in that communication with their own set of glasses, how they see the world. How they see the world, 90% of the time, is fear-based. They're afraid something's going to happen. And if you don't get in front of the communication of what's going to happen, or what is happening in your organization, at the end of the day, they will come up with rumors and beliefs that have absolutely nothing to do with reality. But because you weren't in front of it, now you've got a communication problem. You're going to be spending most of your efforts trying to rebuild that trust and clarify what that situation is. Obviously, one-on-ones, team meetings, all those things need to happen, even if you're so busy you can't reach all your calls. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do that, again, they're going to fill in the blanks based off their own set of glasses. So how can you affect that as a leader? You need to make sure you're building that into your workforce planning. You need to make sure that you are scheduling time away from the phones with your employees, and then you need to be checking to make sure that those meetings are happening. That makes sense? Cross-departmental communication is really important because on this one, we have silos in most organizations, especially larger organizations, where everybody's kind of focused on their own department. And you get a lot of finger pointing. Well, hey, we hit our KPIs, but you guys didn't hit yours. What's up with that, right? That's a real challenge. Well, the main thing is they also don't understand your world, and you don't understand theirs. So the way to kind of get past that is to create cross communication. I had a monthly ops review that I would have where my managers would tell me every month what's going on with their KPIs. Are they improving? Are they, challenged with it? What are the great things that happen? I invited every leader of every other department and every other division to attend my monthly ops reviews. What did I get as a result of that? I got them to have a full understanding of the challenges that we have, and we built a culture of support, and they felt like everyone was kind of working together across the organization, not just in one place. That makes sense to you guys? And the last thing I'd mention, change management, was really around creating employee ownership. Make them part of the solution to this. If you have a new initiative that you're trying to achieve, get them to be giving you input, have them help you test it, have them help you design it, and then you're going to get employee commitment to that. Not just, hey, I can't believe they put this thing in, look what it did. Greg, I think you know about that. Yeah. Okay. And your last one, you've hit your last one. We're going to celebrate your celebration. Okay, so this is employee celebrates each other's accomplishments. There's two things to think about this. One of them is that people like to be recognized. When people are recognized, they have a 60% chance of giving you extra effort if they just feel like you have, even if they have an equal opportunity or feel like they have an equal opportunity to get recognized, they're going to improve their performance for you by 60%. And that's something that's really important for you to understand, especially if you're this top leader in your organization. If they hear it from you, you would be amazed. I'm going to give you two quick things you can do to create celebration in your organization. One of them, none of us are omnipresent. We can't be available 24/7 to see how all the great things that are happening in our organization. We can't see everybody's by minute performance. We have to kind of be able to use the team that we have to capture the things that are going right. So how do we do that? We create a peer recognition program. Peer recognition program is us saying, help us identify all the good things that are happening. Let's create accountability on the other side, not just on the constructive criticism side, right? And when we do that, we start building a much better deposit in the emotional bank accounts of our employees. And the other piece to that is we get all the other employees recognizing that they're part of a good culture and that this is the kind of reinforcement that we're looking for our company. And the last thing is the Hero of the Week program. Ask your managers, just do this in your next manager meeting. Ask them who their Hero of the Week was. When I did that spontaneously one year, I pulled everybody into my meeting. We have a weekly managers meeting. I asked them. I got everybody looking at me with like kind of a blank face, and they kind of blinked at me, and they're like, I don't know, we just spent an hour working on the problem, so I don't know who my hero is, right? They didn't even thought about it. So what did they do? They went out, and I said, well, from this point forward, I'm going to ask this on every managers meeting. So what do? They go out, they start talking to their supervisors. And they're like, all right, here's the deal. Adam's going to ask, right? So who's your hero of the week? And then the supervisors were looking at their managers kind of with that blank look and blinking at them. And then they're like, well, come up with it. Next week, we got to go and report, right? What was really interesting is that got them thinking about it. And what was really cool about that is they would all come in and hear all the positive things that were happening in all the different departments in the center. And it created a nice balance for the managers because, as managers, we're always dealing with problems, right? It was nice to kind of have a balance and hear all the good stuff that's going on too. And you got really a good competition of people going, no, my guy should be the hero of the week. No, my guy did this, or my gal did this. It was a lot of fun. And here's what it really was the coolest thing. After you get done with that meeting, you go up and you see that employee, or you call them if you're a remote place, and you say, hey, I just want to thank you because Cindy, by the way, nominated you for Hero of the Week for your department, and I just want to thank you for doing this great thing you just did. The smile you get from that conversation is bigger than you're ever going to get in your life. It's amazing. Those are just a couple examples of how you can actually celebrate and do it on a real frequent basis. And celebrate not only the individual wins, but company wins. If you guys have done something really great, does anybody follow sports? All right, a few of us, right? You're kind of excited about your team winning. But even if your team's not winning, if you find out, I'm going to use Michael Jordan, I'm from Chicago, right? If you find out Michael Jordan just broke I know it's old, right? But that's me. But if you find out Michael Jordan just broke the record in whatever, 3-pointers or something, right? You're excited to be a Bulls fan, right? You are part of that team. That team is really important. You need to kind of build that same win and that same spirit with your employees and your company. If you had a win, you guys just got a great new client, or you just got something else that happened that was really good, make sure everyone knows about it. Those conversations, we would do cross celebrations. Somebody hit their customer satisfaction goal that, wasn't in the other department, but they hit theirs. We'd celebrate as a team in one entire division because they like seeing the wins and they like to be part of a winning team. That makes sense to you guys? Okay. Last thing is summer summits. This is really an opportunity. When I said to get rid of your silos, this is so that you get all of the different leaders in the organization coming in and helping your employees understand how they made a difference on them achieving their results. That connects them to something bigger than themselves, and that connects them to see how they make a difference. That makes sense to you guys? That's a really important one. It is a little bit of an effort to get it all together, but it really drives the point. All right, so we've learned kind of the benefit of employee engagement and why it's so important that, your CEO, if you are not one, you're going to now be prepared and know why it's so important, because they're going to come looking for you to get answers, or they're going to ask HR to get, some answers. Now you've got an idea of some things you can do. Second thing is you know now how to take a proactive approach in that culture continuum, and you are the leader that's going to be from the top. Even if you're not the CEO, you can do this wherever you are. You can just be the leader in a department, or you can just be a leader in a team, but it's important you take that step and create that voice. Last thing we just learned was all the C's of success, the 7 principles that drive employee engagement and drive your bottom line performance. I've seen this work. When I was able to put all 7 together, we beat our own goal in every major KPI that a company measures for performance for 5 years in a row when I was able to put all 7 of these together. It works. The next steps, while you're thinking about this, I think on the last presentation, if you can, it's always important to put an action item while it's fresh in your mind, and think about what you can do when you go home and write it down so you can commit to it. All right, you guys, thank you for your time. I really appreciate your attention.